What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, a New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Things all good on this side. Just, enjoying this NBA Cup as the Pelicans are not a part of it this
No, they're
season.
not.
I actually was in Vegas last year when the Pelicans were a part of it, just like on sheer this just happened to happen. I had already had the trip planned. And I had a lot of fun out there, man. So I know, the top four seeds, at least Dyson and Larry Nance had, you got some kind of like Pelican feeling out there. But yeah, man, it's good to see the NBA Cup, and we haven't had a pod in a while, so I want to give a shout out to the W for dropping their schedule releases. The schedule releases were absolutely hilarious. Love the Aces one. Love the Chicago Sky one being extra petty about the Seattle Storm having things going on. If you know, you know. But also Unrivaled is about to be coming around, man. The WNBA league that is founded by Breanna Stewart and Nafisha Collier to kind of keep the ladies in the States instead of having to go out and do some things. So there's going to be some really good things. T Spoon is coaching out there, so I'm super excited to see that the ladies and the WNBA. And the college women basketball scene is going crazy. Obviously with Paige and Juju, so the ladies are holding it down, man. The ladies are holding it down, but of course, the NBA is the NBA. We got us a trade with Dennis Schroeder. It's because the NBA has always got something going on. And, as a person who lives in New Orleans and covers the Pelicans, I do understand always having things going on. But yeah, man, everything's all good on this side, man. Enjoying the festivity times and everything, man. So how's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. Just a week away from Christmas, being home, being with the family. And again, for all those that celebrate whatever holiday it is, Christmas, whatever it is, make sure you love your loved ones around this time because this is that time. But you're absolutely right. The NBA is in full swing. I'm excited to watch the Bucks and Dame and Giannis take on Dyson tonight and things like that. But there's also craziness going on.
They're taking on the Bucks.
Oh yeah, the Thunder. The Thunder.
Yeah, that game happened already. They got smoked.
But no, man, there's a bunch of stuff going on in the NBA. Like people missing 43. Listen, the NBA, I understand. Everyone saw the Celtics throw up a gazillion threes per game. Or like, look, we can do it too. And like, there has to be a balance and leveling out of this because nobody wants to watch people just come up the court and chuck threes and have no chance and play no offense. Like it's bad.
Shout out to everybody who's in the street pulling up on us. What up with y'all, man? Good to see everybody. Hope you're feeling better, John. But yeah, to that point, the same week you got the most threes missed in NBA history. You got the most threes made in NBA history between the Mavs and the Warriors in a game. They are chucking those things. Now, Steph Curry broke the game of basketball, and I think people don't realize that just because Steph can do it doesn't mean that you can or should do it. But here we are.
You're absolutely right. But yeah, we will get into this Pelicans, the news that is and the news that's not. And before we do that, make sure you guys will follow us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. So the Pelicans are 5-22. Like we talked about on the last pod, the pod before that, it doesn't make sense every single pod to talk about can they catch up? Is it too late? It doesn't look good. We'll just say it that. And again, like the toughest part about it all is that they're competitive in a lot of these games and they shouldn't be. Like if you went around the NBA and you took the two best players off of every NBA team, what would be left? And like a lot of times it would not be good, but the Pelicans are literally in every game. It's just the other team's best player is Tyrese Halliburton. The other team's best player is De'Aaron Fox. And the Pelicans' two best players are in sweat. So like it's hard to look at it and be like they should be getting blown out every game, but then it's competitive and they want you to drag you in. But you can see the talent that's there. It's just they don't have the gravitational pulls and the solar planets, like CJ McCollum likes to call it, to rotate around. And so like that's that's the problem here. But let's talk about the things we do see from game to game and developments that have grown and the developments that haven't, and some of the reports that have coming out. So naturally, because the Pelican season has been a disaster up until this point, everyone, including their mom and dad and uncle and grandfather, wanted to start trading Pelicans away in the middle of the season, right? I do think, and we've notated on this pod many times, the way the Pelicans are right now, it makes every sense in the world to get under the tax before the deadline so you do not have to be in the tax. So in order to do that, you are going to have to make some type of move. Now, people may say, do it for Brandon Ingram. Get off CJ McCollum. Make a small move, like release Daniel Tice, whatever it may be, to get under. I think it's probably going to be less dramatic than what people think, just because I struggle to see the trade partner on the other side for many of the options that we just talked about. But what the interesting part is, there was a article that came out this week about how anyone was up for trade other than Herb Jones, Yves Missi, and Trey Murphy. And immediately you were like, well, what does that mean for Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram? Here's what I'll say. Again, we're not going to document the trade markets for Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson just because there isn't one. And I don't see the Pelicans rushing to make a bad trade in a situation where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So why not see it through to some degree? I just don't see them rushing to make a bad. We've documented in previous pods how David Griffin hasn't rushed to make bad trades in the past. And so I just don't see them rushing to do one here. But here's an interesting thought in all of that. Regardless of what happens with Zion, what comes with having Brandon Ingram, I don't think Zion is getting traded, and I really still don't think BI is either. The interesting part is Herb Jones, Yves Missi, and Trey Murphy. So over this stretch of not having players available, but unfortunately, you've been able to see a lot of Trey Murphy on ball. And I tweeted out in the middle of last game, each game, you're seeing more and more, Trey can take people off the dribble. Trey can get to the free throw line. Trey's learning how to catch and shoot, but also create space for himself and relocate and shoot. So the question begs to ask, regardless of what happens with the best players, is Trey starting to turn into that predatory wing that everybody in the league is looking for? That is literally the bread and butter of what every team is looking to go find, whether it's Cooper Flag or whatever it is in the draft. Everyone wants that 6'8" to 6'10" wing who can create, who can score, who can defend on the side. You're starting to see some of those things for Trey, even though he's not playing off the gravitational pull of his teammates. So where's your thought process on where things at after the new contract?
Well, you said a lot, and let's talk about some things. Okay, let's talk about some things. So first of all, the report that came out that everyone is available except for, like you said, Trey, Yves, and Herb. Shout out to Yves for getting into that untouchable.
Hey, man.
I was told there was no center, and now all of a sudden there's an untouchable one on the crazy how that works. So the thing about people being available, right, is that even if let's say that is true, and I see everybody, John is echoing basically the fan base's sentiments. It's year 6. BI and Zion have been together. They've had opportunities to show it, kind of, and they haven't. And so now everybody's like, let's get done with this. I think what everyone needs to understand is that the NBA before this CBA is not the NBA that we are currently in now. So when you talk about trading Brandon Ingram, right? Let's just talk about that, right? Because Zion is under contract for however many years. You can trade him next season if you want to, right? You have years to do it. Let's talk about Brandon Ingram and the fact that he is now, at a point where you have to trade him at the deadline, or the perceived notion is that he walks and you get nothing for him. I understand that. What people need to understand is that the NBA franchises and GMs that are not these super GMs, talking about the Clippers, the owner of the Clippers, the NBA franchise who are owned by not super owners is what I meant. So not Steve Ballmer, not the Suns owner, not those super owners. The regular owners are now getting to a point where, the normal owners are getting to a point where they are looking and they are saying, yeah, it's a situation where you might be leaving, and nothing can come out of it, right? But that's no longer like a poison thing for franchises now because of the restrictions of the second tax apron, things like that. You saw that play out. Honestly, you saw that play out with two of the richer super owners. So it's done. The Clippers, instead of trading Paul George for something, they allowed him to walk and basically accepted financial flexibility, draft pick flexibility. They basically say we're picking that over trading Paul George and bringing back money that we don't want, that's not going to help us right now. That we rather just have our cap space and flexibility and not the second tax apron. That's what happened with the Clippers and Paul George. That's how Paul George ended up in Philly without being traded. Right. Same thing with Klay Thompson, right? The Warriors owner said, instead of trading Klay for something that's you get something back instead of losing it for nothing, we're gonna keep our cap flexibility. We're gonna stay underneath the second tax apron instead of trading Klay and bringing in pieces that may or may not help you, that might hinder your books and hold you up for a while. I think the Pelicans are in a similar situation with Brandon Ingram. I think they look at the market and they say, okay, in the preseason, we told you before the season started, go find somebody who's going to pay you that money and who's going to give us something in trade value. There was no trade market there. There was nobody there. Brandon Ingram has dealt with injuries and is not playing currently. So now the Pelicans are saying, well, at the end of the season, you're looking at, Brandon Ingram just loudly told you that I'm looking for a winning environment. Well, the only team that's going to be available to pay anybody is going to be the Brooklyn Nets, and not winning franchises, and especially Brooklyn, who is shipping off players right now as we speak. When we talk about Dennis Schroeder, you talk about these teams. If you looked at the other side, these teams that are looking for stars to fit in, the Warriors, they're looking for Jimmy Butler. Brandon Ingram has not been mentioned about to the Warriors. Like, these teams are not looking, and so there is no market for Brandon Ingram to go. And so the Pelicans are saying, listen, either you're gonna come off that $40 million, $50 million, whatever it is that you're looking for, and come down to a smaller number where we gonna feel comfortable bringing you there, or if you walk away and leave and understand that that's a terrible look and the PR looks terrible, but the Pelicans will have opportunities to maneuver and then open up more flexibility to do whatever, right? And then the question goes to what do you see about, how does that flexibility work? Who is coming? You deal with that when you get that. You're not going to have all the answers to every question down the line. And so that is where the Pelicans and Brandon Ingram stand. I don't know who is knocking down the door to trade for Brandon Ingram, who is more of a floor raiser than a ceiling raiser, and pay him, max contract money. There's just not a team available. And the Pelicans are banking on that to be, hey, this is going to be something that you want to do. We should see what goes on with that. Now, that brings you to the point of Trey Murphy, right? Brandon Ingram has been missing in games. And so, like you said, Trey Murphy has kind of been forced. And I've told you that I like what I see from Trey Murphy. I just would like for him to hit more of the shots that made you pay Trey Murphy, that made you fear Trey Murphy. Those corner, those long threes from the top of the key and trailing and things like that. Again, people are saying in the chat, I saw someone say that like DeJounte is looking like a bad trade. Everybody is in positions where they're like, hell, we got to figure this out on the fly. Like, DeJounte wasn't brought in to be the number one option, to be the number two option. He was brought in to be third, maybe fourth on a good day if Trey is rolling or if CJ is rolling. Like, that's what now you're asking him to not only get guys involved, but like you need to go 20-25 for the Pelicans to have a chance. That is not a role that DeJounte, he can do it, but that's not we saw it in Atlanta and the Spurs. That's not a sustainable championship ready, playoff ready team. You need to have other guys to supplement DeJounte. And I think you're seeing that with Trey. Trey is showing you some things, right? He is showing you that, he can put the ball on the ground, he can get to the rim, he can get fouled and those things. But he's also being guarded by the team's either the best player, the defensive player, or that second defensive player, mimicking the government. Yes, that's exactly. DeJounte and CJ can also basically mirror each other when they first got here. CJ got here, both of the players was hurt. DeJounte got here, both of the players was hurt. It just is just the story of it all. But Trey has shown you some things, but he's being guarded by the best player, the second best defender. And they're game planning for Trey. And he's now, instead of fourth or fifth on the game plan, you're second, you're first. And we've talked about it. Heavy is the head that wears the crown of these one options and these two options. Ask Luka and Kyrie. Ask Tatum and Brown, who go out and night in and night out and face the best defenders and have to carry the team and do what they do, right? And so, like, what we're seeing from Trey is an expedited growth for him. I do think you're seeing some good things. I think everybody needs to start shifting their goals for the, as far as the fans, as far as the team, everybody needs to start shifting their goals for this season. What are you seeing out of Trey? What are you looking for out of Trey? I don't think you're going to get, okay, that is what the championship piece is going to look like with Trey. You're not going to get that until you get a fully formed team, and Trey is now in his spot where he can take advantage of the fourth best defender, the fifth best defender, whatever the case is. And so I do think you're seeing some really good things. I still want to see a little bit more before I start leaning towards, okay, yeah, he's becoming a predatory wing. I want to see more of it. I want to see more consistency out of it. He's had some like really weird, wonky 3-point shooting games. And I've talked to you off the pod and I've said it on the pod. He has to get better at those home run shots. Those shots that put the Pelicans that they've been fighting to get up, to get over the hump, and now they're down 1 or they're down 2, and Trey gets this wide open 3 off of some crazy play, and he misses it. In the fourth quarter games, with games tight, and this will get the Pelicans over the hump and put them ahead by 2 with 15 seconds left, he misses it. He missed one against the, like, there's just a lot of the shots that you would want a guy who's getting paid over $100 million to say, and who is known as a knockdown shooter. That is the shot that I need you to hit. Those are the shots I want you to hit. And I think that is what I want to see more out of Trey. The on the ball, on the ground stuff, I think that's going to come. I think he still is learning, and he's going to continue to learn, and it's just difficult to do it as the number one option. That's why there's only a couple in the NBA. But I think what you're seeing is constant development and constant growth. And I think he needs to focus on, and the Pelicans need to focus on making that a part of his game, kind of how what they tried to do with Jordan Hawkins in the preseason, where they just put him out there as point guard. It didn't turn out well, but you gave him the opportunity to do it. I think Trey is going to have some opportunities with B.I. and Zion out for a foreseeable future. And the trade deadline coming up, you never know what might happen. In the event that Brandon Ingram does get traded, you do have to have a guy to come in and score off the dribble. Brandon Ingram is elite at that. I don't expect Trey Murphy to get there this soon, but the drop off between those two, as far as shot creation and that gravity you talked about, is night and day. And if the Pelicans have that much faith in Trey Murphy, he needs to start showing more consistency in that, and show that $100 million contract isn't just for the shooting, and particular things here. It's for an all around predatory wing, which I think he can get there.
Here's where I'm at with Trey. I don't think I'm in necessarily a different spot than I was this offseason. When we talked about, okay, let's say you move Brandon Ingram and you build pieces, you draft somebody. This was before you've had line of sight to a top 5 pick in the draft. I'm not sure Trey's ever going to be a 1 option or a 2 option, to be honest with you. Because, like, if you look at the guys who are generally that, generally they're that pretty early on. Like you can kind of see the traits of I'm a playmaker. I can create for myself in different spots. I can create for others in different spots. And yes, nobody growth is not linear, so people grow at different spots. But generally, you see them right away. And to your point, Trey is naturally a catch and shoot player, and he's developing the get to the rim. Like right now, he's getting fouled on 10% of his drives to the rim. And you look at some of the other wings around the league. Luka, Franz, LeBron, 12%, 11%, 11%. Like that's kind of what you want to see. And like, what is the knock that we've always talked about Brandon Ingram, which you'll get to, is like he doesn't get to the free throw line in that same way. And so that's encouraging. But the things I look for Trey outside of like being able to be the guy, because I don't think you ever want to set Trey up to where he has to be the one option, is are you maximizing everything that God has given you, right? Like the first time I saw Trey Murphy in any capacity in a professional setting was in Summer League, his rookie year when Willie Green was the head coach. He was going against Evan Mobley, and I was like, that guy can play defense. That guy can rebound. Since then, it's been a slow curve for that. Like since then, it's been, all right, Trey's getting better in those areas. And so there was always like some talk around, well, is Trey a two guard? Is he a Klay Thompson? Things like that. And I've always been like, is Trey not 6'10" and can he not jump out the gym? Why are we talking about two guard? He needs to be closing at the 5 or the 4 because he's tall and he can rebound. And so there was a couple games this week where Trey had to go in the first half, and then Trey kind of settled back down. And you could tell the veteran guys in their interviews were like, Trey has to learn in the second half of games. People guard you differently if you get going, and you got to find other ways to set up. Willie Green himself, he's like, Trey has to be more aggressive and things like that. Here's the knock that people have been knocking Zion about and Brandon Ingram about as well. How are you off ball, and how are you getting rebounds? Well, Trey is 6'10". If he would create more opportunities for himself by offensive rebounding, he would get more shot attempts. It doesn't all have to be catch and shoot, right? And so when he starts maximizing that, you ask the question, okay, if you've got Yves Missi as your athletic, rim-running, blocking shot 5, but then you can close the game with Trey Murphy, with someone who doesn't have a Jokic or Embiid or something like that, and you can play small, which the Pelicans have said they want to do all year, that's an advantage to you. But if Trey's going to be the 5, he's going to have to rebound. And so, like, when I look at those, that's an area where throughout this season, to your point, Wemby will shoot one-legged threes from half court. He has the ultimate green light because San Antonio ain't trying to go nowhere. At this point in the season, like, I think it's that point where you got to kind of see what Trey has and lean into that. But at the same time, he's got to delegate that on himself. And so I think it's a tightrope to balance, because you still have guys like CJ McCollum. You still got guys like DeJounte Murray, and you don't want to do anything that doesn't feel natural. But at the same time, you just gave Trey Murphy a contract, and with the expectation that there is growth to be had, and it's probably coming from him playing on ball than off ball. So I'm curious to see how Trey continues to develop. But in terms of his ability to just be able to create off the dribble, period, both getting to the rim and to be able to create mid-range and things other than the three-point shot, night and day this season than last season. So the trajectory for him seems good, but again, to your point, you got to have more evidence. You got to see him string together a string of games where he consistently is getting to the rim. He's consistently moving when he doesn't have the ball and things like that before you really buy into that area. So the Pelicans are, again, the results don't necessarily show it, because to your point and how you open the pod, like everybody is out of position. No one, CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray and Trey Murphy shouldn't be deciding who's the one option and the two option every single night. But that's the position that they're in. And so that trickles down to everybody else. But each game, you feel as if they're close, but the other team has the best player on the court and the Pelicans do not. What kind of stands out from you? Because the Pelicans are gaining chemistry. Like, they didn't practice all summer together. Then after game 1, everyone got hurt. So now players are starting to come back, and it's like, oh, yeah, I don't know how he plays. I don't know how he plays. And you can see it on the court. So what are some of the things you're taking away from a positive and from a negative standpoint?
Yeah, I think, we've been talking on this podcast about you getting dangerously close to a certain time where you had to make a decision on this season. And I stand by that. I think we're at like 80% to the decision, if not 90, if not 90%. And I think the decision, I think you don't even need to make the decision at this point, because I think the Pelicans are up against the chemistry, the injury, their injuries. Everybody's playing out of position as far as like the role of the team. So I think like those are going to be working against you regardless as if, DeJounte's out there, Trey's out there, and CJ's out there. Like, you're like, okay, this is looking like a Fiza Herb is out there and Yves, and you got this starting five, but you're like, well, who's the guy that's going to be closing the game against Luka and Kyrie? And okay. So what stands out to me, first of all, on the positive side, I think is obviously Yves Missi, and I think Yves and DeJounte are really going to have something once they get more time on task together. I think there's a two-man game, and Yves is starting to learn how to play two-man game, with DeJounte, with other guys as well. I think Yves has shown an ability to go toe-to-toe with some of the better, big men defensively. And he's showing some offensive things, right? I asked for that in the preseason, and he's kind of showing it during the regular season. But some of the things that I think, that I've, as you watch the game, first of all, I do think that the Pelicans will be further along, and I think the fan base will be further along with decisions on both Brandon Ingram and really kind of CJ McCollum. If Trey Murphy had kind of, like we talked about, stepped up and shown that he was ready to take on a more mantle. And it just sucks because I think the Pelicans had something with Jordan Hawkins. And I think a decision could have been, they talk about CJ being available. I think that's a decision that would have came a long time ago had Jordan Hawkins continued playing, and continue to be healthy. I think they're really missing his just randomness, right? He's not the perfect player. He doesn't, like, I don't think he would solve and win, win games. But I do think his randomness, his spontaneous offense, spontaneous cuts, his random getting in there and put back dunks and chase down blocks, and really his rebounding from the guard position. I think the Pelicans are really missing all of that. What he brings to the game on the offense, and really like the defensive side when you talk about rebounding and like even contested shots at the rim. I think they're really missing that. And then also, I think like the Pelicans really are finding, and it's going underneath the radar. It's 5-22. It's ugly. It's not going to be pretty. This is not what you came into the season to look for. But I mean, when you were talking about even as early as last season, when the end of the bench contained like Cody Zeller and like just a myriad of guys that you were like, what? Just you could combine like four of these guys and try to get one. Like you're finding like Brandon Boston, Jeremiah Robinson Earl is showing you some things. Like there are guys towards the end of the bench now, and God forbid this team ever gets whoever's on it, right? Whether it's Brandon Ingram, Zion, if anybody, if the team was healthy and had healthy players on it, I think that you would really be excited about some of these guys. Like you watch other teams around and they find these guys like the Suns got Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And now everybody's talking about, but they got Ryan Dunn as well. And like they got the other rookie that I can't remember his name, starts with an O. But like you find all of these other guys in better, when you have a better team in situations like found money, right? The Celtics finding Peyton Pritchard. Like that's just found money for them. The Knicks getting Quentin Grimes, like there's just, the Mavs getting Quentin Grimes. Like there's just a lot of guys at the end of the bench in better situations where you're like, man, and the Mavs found this guy, and the Knicks found this guy. The Pelicans would be in that situation with Brandon Boston. He's a tremendous story, right? You got all of these other guys, but it's just the fact that you're relying on them so much now. to be in positions like Jeremiah Robinson Earl getting 10 plus shots is absolutely egregious in the year of 2024. But he has to, right? Like he has to do it. And so I think that the Pelicans really have found some guys in Brandon Boston and Jeremiah Robinson Earl in particular who can come in and do what you need them to do, in certain roles. The roles that they're being asked to is unfair right now. But I think that you have found guys that can come in and do some things. And the last part, I think the Pelicans, like you said before, have found something in Trey Murphy closing games at the 5. Like we always thought it was going to be Zion or whatever the case is. But like he's showing the ability to close at the 5 and what he can do as a small ball 5 to close the game. And so I'm interested to see how that develops throughout the throughout the year, because again, Carlo is obviously not getting any minutes. And so, you have Yves out there. Who else is going to be playing, some of those 5 minutes, especially with Zion and Brandon Ingram out. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. What have you seen this season, good or bad?
Yeah, I would say like this. This is, again, a lot has been made about, Willie Green and the coaching staff making adjustments and putting people in the best position to succeed. I'm going to die on the hill that I don't know a lot of coaches that are getting wins when their top 8 players are not available. And then as they come back, are still getting wins versus some of the best teams in the West when their top 2 players are on bed. Like, I don't see a lot of that happening around the league. So that's where I land on it. Could there be opportunities to put the team in better positions to win? Sure. Could there be opportunities to maybe, do better or get more out of a player? Sure. But like, altogether, like these are not great circumstances to be succeeding in. But here's what I will call out. I don't like the lack of adjustments based off of what your situation is. And this is what I mean. Like on offense, we've been screaming for seasons. The Pelicans have predatory wings. They need to go attack other teams' worst defenders the same way the other teams call out CJ. When there's 5 other guys on the court and there's 4 guys who can defend, they find the one who can't and go at him over and over and over. The Pelicans need to be doing that. It looks and seems as if this summer the Pelicans are like, we are going to start doing that. It just so happened that all of your players who would be good in those situations were not available. So instead of saying we no longer have the Zion, the Brandon Ingram that's going to get us there, you're still mismatch hunting when a lot of times you don't really have the mismatch. Like you really don't have the advantage there. Like a lot of people are going to live with their best defender guarding a CJ McCollum or DeJounte Murray.
No, look, before you get off of that, you brought up I thank you for bringing this point up because it slipped my mind and I definitely want to add on to that. You are absolutely right. The predatory hunting when you don't have the mismatch, it is nerve-wracking. But here's what I hate, and I'm glad you brought this up before you move on to your next topic. And I tweeted about this. The Pelicans offense is just so predictable and it's so ugly because I feel like they bring up one high screen at the top of the 3-point line and they run something off of it. If there's nothing that comes out of it, they go directly into dribble handoffs and bailout shots. There is no it's almost as if they're trying to run the Brandon Ingram Zion, like you said, predatory, bring the big man up screen, traditional offense without Brandon Ingram and Zion. And over and over is DeJounte getting a screen from Yves. He's rolling. If it's there, they throw it, get something out of it. If it's not, they back it out. Here, Trey, come dribble handoff. Here, DeJounte, dribble handoff. 10 seconds left. Here, CJ, dribble handoff. Bail shot. Over and over and over again. And to your point, it's just, I don't understand if you're seeing the other team say, okay, I understand you're running that offense. We're not going to run a pick and roll because Yves is pretty good at switching his. How about the guard come set the screen? Or whoever CJ you're trying to hide CJ on, he comes set the screen. And let's go downhill and attack him, make people come and help and kick out, right? And then you play off of that, right? That next person kicks out and attacks the second closeout. Then you get lobs at the rim for Yves. Like, there's just so many other things you can do other than Yves, come set the screen. Doesn't work. Back dribble out to the and the lack of adjustments from that. Like you can when the Pelicans come down at half court, you can almost call it out. And if you can see it and I can call it out, I'm pretty sure Rick Carlisle can call it out. I'm pretty sure Draymond Green can call it out. I'm pretty sure like all of these teams were like people who think basketball even a little bit, let alone some of the great basketball minds. They know how to foil that. And then the Pelicans go through these stretches where they just can't score. And it's just so maddening that, like, again, we talk about year 6 with Zion and BI and not being able to play. But it's also maddening that we're all the way here and still can't generate like any secondary offense after the pick and roll start. So I'm glad you triggered me. You triggered my memory, and I want to get that out before we moved on to the next one. But yes, the lack of adjustments is maddening.
Right. And I mean, and the other side of the token is, well, they don't have a lot of time to practice because they're constantly moving. So if you came in with this offense and you plan to run this offense, it's hard to adjust on the fly when you don't have time to practice and your roster is fluctuating from week to week and from game to game, from hour to hour, quarter to quarter. Like that, I understand the difficulty there, but still, like I watch other offenses in the NBA and there's movement. There is, okay, we don't have our best player on the court. How do we generate looks for guys who are not predatory wings? And like the Pelicans missed that. And before everyone say it's Willie Green's fault, James Borrego is the offensive coach. Like Willie Green came in as the defensive coach, and everyone's like, "Don't let James Borrego leave the building." Well, I'm sure he has something to say when he watches the offense not do anything for minutes at a time. And so, like that part is interesting to me. And on the defensive side of the ball, like here's the bad part about moving on from a Zion or a Brandon Ingram. Like I said, I don't think it's a high probability for Zion, and like we'll see on Brandon Ingram. You are missing so much size and athleticism. Like I watch a lot of the games. I'm like, the Pelicans are like the smaller team and they're like the shorter team, and like everything feels difficult because they're just playing against big brothers is what it feels like. And so like as soon as Yves sits down, you lose, or Trey sits down, you lose all of your size with no Zion or Brandon Ingram. And so like I think that's something that needs to be addressed at some point. You brought it up about Brandon Boston. Here's what I'll say. Like, I think he's going to take someone's spot because, like, even once everyone gets healthy, his game is exactly what you want. Like, it is a 6-man game, like someone who is low maintenance, you don't spend a whole lot of money on, but at any point in time can come in and get buckets. He can be the primary scorer and he can go get his own. He can play off ball and catch and shoot. He's tall enough to defend, so he's not a liability. And not now you've been seeing him get chased down blocks and hustle and things like he's a microwave scorer who you don't pay a lot of money to. And so I'm like, okay, we just talked about the Pelicans being small. Well, eventually Jordan Hawkins can get back, and then DeJounte's there, and then CJ's there, and then, oh yeah, Jose plays for the team. And then it's like, well, someone's not playing. Like, and this man is averaging 12 points per game coming off the bench, like, and pretty efficient shooting. And I'm just like, it's going to be really hard to take him out of the rotation because he's alluded to it. Like, they've told me I've got a role even when people come back. Zion's alluded to him. That's someone we need to find a way to keep. Brandon Ingram's talking. And so it's like everyone tends to see what he can bring to the table. So somebody's minutes is not like there has to be a move to be made there. And so like those are the things that pop out to me. You brought up Yves Missi a little bit earlier. Normally I wouldn't ask this question because the team is 5-22 and there's not a whole lot of successes for the season. But this is a year where there is no Victor Wembanyama. And so, like, I'm looking at the rookie standings right now. Remember, my preseason bold prediction was Yves was finished top 5. Right now, he's top 4 in the NBA rankings. But then I look at the players above him, like Jeremy McCain was playing great for Philly. They're not having a great season either. And I'm like, well, is there a path where Yves
also Jeremy McCain? Jeremy McCain is also Jeremy McCain is out for like a long time. Like I think he like sprained that he tore his ACL or something like. He had a major injury. He's gonna be out for a while. Anyway,
exactly. So if he's the leader, and there's a couple other guys that are in front of Yves because their teams are more successful right now, can Yves win Rookie of the Year? Like it's a crazy thing to think about because the team is doing so poorly. But like I look around the other rookies and I'm like, Well, Yves has been pretty dominant on a night-to-night basis, and I'm not sure you can say that about some of these other guys.
Yeah, so obviously, Victor Wembanyama winning last year, and then the runner-up was Brandon Miller. And again, Victor is a one of one. Of course, he was gonna win. We always talk about the narrative push, but he played out of his mind as well. So well deserved. But the Spurs weren't a good team, and neither were the Hornets. So the best rookies usually go to bad teams. Like that's how you get the number one pick, right? Unless it's one of those weird years like with the Grizzlies and Zach Edey. But usually the best players go to these struggling teams. And so I mean, if you're top three, then why can't you win it, right? Like if you're top three, you can win it. I do think, regardless of how the Pelican season goes, like I don't think they're gonna. I think they're too far back. I think they're too far back. Regardless of how the season goes, though, I do think that if he wants to win, like they can't be like 10 and like 72. Like they can't be that. But I do think they have to win like some games. Like the Spurs won some games. Like the Hornets won some games. Like you had 5-22 and like losses and losses and losses keep coming. And Brandon Ingram and Zion are not coming through the door in 2024. So it's tough. But I do think they would have to. But he has an opportunity. He has played out of his mind. He has been the best big in the draft so far. He has blown through expectations, and it's again poetic injustice that he's blown through expectations while everything else around him. You know what he reminds me of? You ever seen a meme of the dog who's like at the table and he's like, this is fine, and like everything else around him is burning down? Like that's Yves. Or like when Childish Gambino walks into the apartment and all hell has broken loose and he's just like holding out the pizza like, is everything okay? Like God bless Yves. He is too young and too inexperienced to know what the hell is going on around him and understand. He just know I'm put the ball out there and I'm hooping. I saw him like turn his ankle really bad in the game, like turned his ankle and like got up, tied his shoe, and like got back to it. Like that dude loves to hoop. He's a hooper. And so I do think that he has an opportunity. Again, if you're top three, you have every opportunity. I just think the Pelicans are going to have to win a monicum of games in order for him to get that kind of honor, because they just can't be the bottom. If you like, if you win 20 games or 25 games, then I think he has an opportunity. You win like 10, 15 games, I just don't think you'll be able to do it. So, I think he has an opportunity. He just has to continue to play the way he plays. Again, I think, like you said, I think he's leading rookies in doubles. Like he is a coach's dream and a team, literally a healthy Pelicans team dream. But obviously stakes are what they are and things are what they are. So I think he has an opportunity, but the Pels they're gonna have to get out of this rut and start to put some wins behind him in order for him to get some traction, some national traction.
Here's what I'll say, and I think this is my worst case scenario, but I'm gonna say it on air just because it is. I think that as the Pelicans get healthy going into 2025, they're going to win some games, but not enough games to get into the play-in and not enough games to be like a top 4 worst record in the league. And you're going to be right there in the middle. Like, I think that's the worst case scenario. But to your point, when it comes to Yves, as B.I. and Zion get back and, like, you have to guard Zion with 5 players again, and Yves is just standing by the goal like, oh, yeah, I can jump out the gym. Like, I think he's going to get substantially better. That's the crazy part about all of this. He's been doing this while the situation is awful. We just talked about how everybody's in roles they shouldn't have. Yves is, like, literally the best person on the Pelicans right now at getting to the rim. Like, the only one who can consistently get to the rim over and over. So people are guarding the lob. That's crazy. We're talking about this in the year 20. People are guarding the lob pass from Yves because they know he's the only one that can beat them at the rim other than Trey on a drive and things like that. Imagine if Zion was on the court, how much space Yves would have to operate. And he's been so good on the offensive boards that I think that he's going to eat those up the same way JV did when Zion would miss and things like that. And so, like, I just think that there is a world that Yves looked substantially better in 2025, the second part of the season, than he did in 2024. And like when you look at like the nuances of the game, like he's picking it up on the first part of his rookie season, like basic stuff, like when to slip screens, when to dive hard, when to double, when to attack. Like you were asking Jackson Hayes to do this for like 5 seasons, and like Yves Missi is picking it up in the first 30 games of the season. And so I just think as the roster starts to come to fruition, he is going to thrive in that area. And like I shortchanged the man. This summer I was like, I think Yves could be very similar to Derek Lively, but he's not as refined as him. I'm looking at Derek Lively's stats, and I'm looking at Yves Missi's stats, and Yves has him beat in pretty much every category. And I'm like, man, that's without Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving on the court, and Yves is thriving in that scenario. So, like, I think that it's a really real shot if the Pelicans win games and the roster gets healthy and Yves starts playing a traditional setting that he has an opportunity to win.
Before we move on, let me comment on the situation with the winning games towards the thing, right? And I know people are saying like that's terrible. That's an awful thing to do. I would say we talked about needing to have questions answered, on the last part, having to figure out some things, right? Figure out Yves is good. Figure out can Trey do this. Figure out can Hawk play with this person, whatever. Right. I would just pause and remind everybody that last season, the prevailing thought or the prevailing push was to trade Zion for a pick to Portland to draft a certain point guard, all right, to draft that guy. I just want people to remember that college highlights, that AAU highlights, G League highlights, all of those are beautiful. You do not know how those young players will translate to the NBA. You don't know. The Blazers thought for sure that they had their next generational guard. They let Damian Lillard go to Portland, to Milwaukee, and drafted Scoot. And everybody thought, okay, he's out. Scoot is coming in, gonna take over the league. I just want you to, whenever you get an opportunity, to go look at Scoot Henderson's stats. Whenever you get an opportunity, just take a gander at it. These guys that are in college, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Ron Harper, like they are incredible players, and they will come in. VJ Edgecombe, like these guys could come in and do some things, and put together a show and contribute. I just don't know. Just be careful what you wish for, right? Be careful for ditch this whole team, get rid of Brandon Ingram, who has shown on an NBA level that he can play and do things. He might not be able to do everything that you love. Get rid of them and draft another 19, 20-year-old guy, because obviously if you're in the lottery, you draft an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy, they're going to come in and be the next face of the franchise. Just be careful, because we've seen it time and time again where they go in, where people make decisions and the franchise has to pay for it for years to come back. Thank God the Trailblazers found Shaedon Sharpe and guys like that, and have Anthony Simon on the roster, because if they had traded Dame and was building everything on Scoot Henderson, it would be awful. It would be terrible. They would not be doing. They still are not doing well, but it would be even worse than where they are now. So when you're talking about the Pelicans and you're talking about, hey, just blow it up and draft the next Zion or draft the next Brandon Ingram and one of these guys, they may well be. They may not be as the guy that you think they are. So just be careful. When you talk about just getting rid of NBA proven talent to get these these unproven guys who look good in college, who look good in G League or in AAU, against guys who will never ever touch an NBA floor ever. Just be careful.
Here's what I'll say to that. I don't think it's gonna matter. You're 17 games down. So let's say Zion and Jose and BI come back. Happy New Year, ready to play January 2nd to start the season. How many games down you gonna be then?
Yeah, I don't think they have a try. I'm just saying those people who just get rid of all
15 games in a row. You're still 5 games, and so to your point to start it, I think that you have to leave this season with a couple things. You need to see how DeJounte fits in with Zion and Trey and Hawk and Yves and what that looks like. And can they build some chemistry together? Like we keep talking about this team has no chemistry. They have to find it some way. And you would rather that happen in NBA games, damned if you make the play-in or not. You want to see some type of building spots to say, okay, let's make this adjustment. Let's do this turn. Let's do this tweak. And so even if you're gearing up for a top 5 pick or whatever it may be, even if you win some games and you're playing everybody, you still might get that top 5 pick. So I don't think it matters.
And especially with the Pelicans, you want these questions answered because even if you trade Zion and Brandon Ingram, let's say you got rid of both of them, you still have DeJounte on the floor on the contract. You still have Trey Murphy on the contract. You still have Herb Jones on the contract. Like you have guys who, like you can't just be like, all right, like you have all young players who are just like the scratching the surface. You still have guys you're gonna have to be competing. So you want to get some kind of something going into next season, and not just saying, "Well, to hell with it. Let's just draft Cooper Flag, and that's gonna fix everything."
Right, exactly. So again, like I'm looking for the changes. I'm looking for the growth from game to game and seeing are these guys starting to figure each other out. No, it's never going to be perfect when you don't have your 2 best players on the court. But at the same time, can you develop something? Can you get some type of momentum going around DeJounte? DeJounte's been out of rhythm all season long, coming off the hand injury, which I'm sure that impacts how you shoot the ball and how you carry the ball and pass the ball and things like that. Like he gets in some type of rhythm offensively from an efficiency standpoint. But with that being said, that's all we got for you this episode. The Pelicans play again. I feel like the Pelicans played 2 games in like the month of December. It's been insane with the in-season tournament. But what you got left for the people, guys?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today, especially during these holiday season. It has been far and few between Pelicans games, but you know they're coming back this weekend. You know, it's I think, you know, as people start to kind of embrace and accept what's going on with the season, I think it's time for people to really start to kind of change your vision for the Pelicans this season, change the view of what's going to happen. They are way too far back in a very stacked conference. And so even if they get these guys back, you would have to win on like a 90% win streak, and it's just not going to happen, right? And so I think now it's more opportunity to look at some of these guys, look what can be put together. And again, you know, we talk about Willie Green and Willie Green's, you know, the short deck that he's been given over and over again. But you know, there is opportunity to evaluate Willie Green as well, right? And his play calling and things like that, and make, you know, decisions, not to fire him or anything or whatever, if they want to, fine, whatever, but just to make decisions on, hey, like this is something that like this has to be a make or break for you going into next season with whatever new team, whatever. So there's a lot of things to be looking at with this Pelicans team. Yves, Trey Murphy's development, Jordan Hawkins when he gets back, the chemistry. There's a lot to watch for this team, even if the wins are not. And you know, with this schedule coming up, you got the Rockets and the Suns and the Lakers, the Nuggets, and just good luck, right? Just good luck. But anyway, as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball no E. As always, if you get your socials, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys in the next one.